So, Heather, we had one last thing. You had given us a great update on what we learned from the inadvertently, supposedly, from the Mueller investigation this week, which was that Paul Manafort, the things that Robert Mueller says that he lied about had to do with him passing information on to a known colleague, asset of Russian intelligence, we should say, passing things on from the campaign that are very strange to pass on to the campaign. And Manafort doesn't deny that he did these things. He just denied that he lied about it. But the question becomes, why do we know this? Now, the easy answer is just that Paul Manafort has the world's most ignorant lawyers when it comes to redaction in 2018. There are some people who speculate that one of the things that the Mueller investigation said about Paul Manafort when they said the plea deal is broken apart was that Manafort had been in touch with the Trump administration the Trump people for quite some time. And there was some speculation that Manafort had pretended to a plea deal so that he could pass information on to the Trump people as to what was going on with the investigation. What do they know? Let's get our story straight. There are some people who speculate that this was not an accident. These fake, these poorly done redactions, that it was basically a public way of letting the Trump team know what Mueller knows from Manafort. What's your sense of that?
I don't know. I think that's thoroughly possible. I mean, why not? I mean, they have been, obviously, Manafort has been trying to communicate with the Trump team from the beginning. I mean, I think that's obvious, and that's come out in a number of different ways. And it may be that since they've been buttoned up, since the plea deal thing fell apart, maybe this was the only way they could do it. On the other hand, I read a lot of lawyers online saying, hey, look, this happens more than you think. This whole idea of protecting documents and doing all that, it's often sloppy. And we did see it earlier with a thing about Julian Assange, where that was revealed that there was some case pending against him. It caused a big brouhaha. So I don't know. But I do know that, it's the type of thing that Donald Trump will certainly be, glad to know if he didn't know it already. And I doubt very much that the Mueller team was very happy with this coming out. I mean, it's nice for you and I and for everybody else being go, ooh, look at that, But as far as building the case, that may not have been something that Mueller was very happy with. I assume that he wasn't. And by the way, there was just one other thing before we wrap up this particular segment. Is that Gabe Sherman in Vanity Fair, who has some very interesting sources in the Trump White House, says that he had heard a friend of Rudy Giuliani said that he knew the Mueller report was going to be horrific, and they were terrified of it. And I just thought I'd throw that out there because I think it's kind of amusing, considering the other what we hear from them.
I guess we're gonna have to wait on that, but we shall see. There are 3 minutes left or so in this segment, and I want to make sure that we mention this because we didn't have a chance to. When the Democrats came in, the first thing they did was something that I think you and I had talked about for some time, was to offer a piece of legislation that was a suite of policy proposals that had to do with voting, had to do with like motor voter registration, had to do with allowing people with felony records to vote after they got out of prison. There was a whole series of not just a motor voter, but any contact that you had with the state would automatically register you to vote unless you opt out it. There was and making it a federal holiday for federal workers to go and vote. There was a lot of reforms that are that do two things. One, it shows that the Democrats are understand the problems with voting in this country. We do not have a constitutionally mandated right to vote, which is a problem. and the disenfranchisement of literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in this country is an ongoing problem with the Republican Party. It also, from a partisan perspective, is a smart thing to do because, we see Republicans do this in a much more grotesque fashion, right? They get into office and they pass laws that, some instances, they do this in lame duck session, that literally, amass them more power and strip others of more power. And to see the Democrats pass, or I should say, pass in the House anyways, a bill that not only furthers democracy, which is obviously crucially important and the most important thing, but it also helps them build a power base. Yes. That is encouraging to me.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And I think it was symbolic, but also practical for them to put that out there first. And by the way, I would just add that according to the New York Times, one of the first things that the Oversight Committee under Elijah Cummings is going to be investigating is all this scandal surrounding what Trump and the RNC and the rest of the Republicans are trying to do with the census, which is also part of this whole voting, sort of group of issues that they brought together. So I think that the Democrats are definitely on the right track on that, and I'm encouraged that they see that kind of thing as a priority. Let's talk about, I hope they start talking about, D.C. statehood and Puerto Rican statehood and things like that.
D.C. statehood was part of that bill. D.C. statehood was part of that bill. Now, Puerto Rico was not, but D.C. statehood was, in fact.
Good.
So there was a whole host of those type of democratic reforms that also have the added benefit, at least that shows that there's some consciousness of this, that when you take power, particularly in an era with these type of Republicans, you need to make sure that you can maintain power. And Digby, with the hopes that we maintain the power of this show, hope to talk to you again next week. As always, a pleasure.